Yes, yes. What's good, people? It's Dan Lewis. It's on the Bywire. Bywire News, brand new show. And we are here to bring you the latest in independent media stories and also a little look at what's going on in the world and bring you some good news stories because the world is, well, we make it as good as we want to be. And here at Bywire, we want to make sure the good news gets out there so we can make the world a better place. You know what I'm saying? Dano. Now, before we get started, I need your help. I want to make sure this show keeps going. I want to make sure it's lively. And I want to make sure I get the illest guests in here on the Bywire for you. So make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, hit us up on the socials. You know what it is. Come on, man. I'm think_become on all the platforms, and it is Bywire News everywhere for everything. And you know that means we bring you hundreds of different independent media partners news every day, all day. Check the Instagram stories, check the Facebook posts, the tweets, the fleets, the whole lot is all there, trust me. And what we try and do as well, and on top of that, is we give you a different perspective to what the mainstream media is trying to provide. Now, while you check us out on bywire.news, which is our website, make sure you hit up the support button. And anytime you're on any one of those independent media news companies, websites, make sure you hit that support button as well. If you can afford to support independent media, that means you are taking control, because right now the mainstream media is controlled by a small number of people and they are leading the narrative. And we want to change that. We want to make sure that people own the media. People have access to the media and that the media is for everyone. You know them ones where you go on a website and you're typing in and you're like, oh no, I can't read the rest of it, because they want you to sign up and pay for it, all these paywalls and stuff. You don't get that with us. With us, it is pure independent news that is owned by the people, for the people, and about the people. You know what I'm saying? Now, this week's show, we have got a couple of cool guests. First of all, we are bringing back James Schneider for part 2 of the interview I held with him a couple of weeks ago. He's going to be talking more about the work he did with Novara, and also how we can actually do more to support independent media. And then next up, we have got the formidable Chañtelle Lunt. Now, Chantelle is an activist, a writer, a businesswoman. Chantelle's doing a lot right now, involved with a lot of different organizations. And we wanted to get her on, give her a platform to be able to let us know what she's up to, and also talk about 3 of today's stories that some of our independent media partners have covered. Don't forget, if you like what you're seeing, if you want to see more of this, hit the like button, hit the share button, and hit us up in the comments. We love to chat with you guys. Let's get straight into it. We're starting off today with our interview with James Schneider. He is back with a bang, and let's hear more from James. In a few pieces for Novara Media titled How We Win, and the piece obviously that I'm most excited about is How We Win the Media, talking about, you know, what we can do to win. And like, I understand that that may not be specifically from a party political point of view, but really from a small p political view of coming from the left, socialism, ideas that are going to make the world a better place for everyone, not just a few. And our view is that the media should be available to everyone and owned by everyone, not just a few. There's a lot that you cover in regards to what's gone on over the last 10-15 years, but also specifically over the last year, and how we've seen many stories come out in the mainstream media. As I mentioned before, you know, things trickle into the mainstream media, but that was thanks to independent media actually doing the investigation and finding these things out. What I would like to understand really more is your view on how do we put independent media into a position where not only are they getting credit for the work that they're doing, but actually their stories are getting to the front of the agenda rather than being side pieces or being talked about later on. And how you think that will work, how we would do that.
Yeah, so I think it's got to be joined up. And basically, I think my approach for how we win the media comes in 3 parts, and you know, independent media is an absolutely crucial bit to it. So let's start there. I think there needs to be much more done, which is starting to happen with the IMA and Corbyn's Peace and Justice Project is also working on this, to bring together independent media to share resources, to be more able to access funding, to share platforms, to develop shared technology, to have equipment that's available for different people to share. And I think that kind of infrastructural work is a kind of important baseline. Then the second thing is within that is like championing the good stories and making sure that those that have platforms are putting out those versions of the stories and they're promoting those things. So it's like people have suddenly seemed to notice in the last week, because of some row about a flat and John Lewis gear and that kind of stuff, that there's, you know, maybe something a bit dodge going on with the government. And you know, this bit of the story is so small fry, and you know, standing saying, oh, you know, well, this questions the integrity and the authority or whatever. I mean, the real issue about government corruption, not a bit of sleaze, government corruption is being baked into the heart of how COVID has been responded to. Absolutely baked into it. And Byline Times, for example, also Open Democracy, have done, you know, months and months of this reporting, how one Tory donor gives some money and then gets multi-million pound PPE contract with no experience of manufacturing, no experience of medical equipment. People know about the Matt Hancock pub text, but basically this hasn't cut through to mainstream broadcast, and that's where people are really going to hear it. So while we at the kind of grassroots, we can, you know, promote these stories and we can help them get out, it's clearly, you know, that's clearly not sufficient. So then we need to move on to what's the next thing. And then the next thing is people who do have platforms who can get into the mainstream media. And okay, since Jeremy stopped being leader, there has been a retreat from socialists and socialist perspectives in the media, but really we need to reverse that retreat now. You know, anybody who is able to get on the media, who's got some access to the media, needs to, you know, be organized. We need possibly, you know, like a little press office to help do it. NEON, the New Economic Organisers Network, do brilliant work in this, and that needs to be supported, but this can be expanded. And then those people, when they're going on and they do get their small slot on BBC or Sky or on GMB or whatever, they raise these stories. And they, you know, let's say someone's on GMB one morning and there's the latest culture wars outrage that the government is trying to use as a distraction technique. Then people on the left should say, no, you know what, I'm not getting into this. This idea that people were trying to attack Churchill's statue, for one, factually they weren't. And secondly, this is a distraction because 150,000 people have died and there's been billions of wasted money that has been handed out in corrupt, dodgy contracts, and that the whole structure of our state, the privatized state, the outsourced state, is one that drives corruption. This is not an individual mistake. This is not a few dodgy Tories. This is not the odd dodgy civil servant. This isn't a few nasty companies. This is absolutely baked in. And I think that argument needs to be made. And then the third thing I think that we have to do, and this is where, and this can be slightly tricky because journalism is independent, but where it needs to be linked up to movements. Because, you know, how do you get attention in this world, especially in this world in 2021, the attention economy? How do you gain attention? It is with controversy, and it's with outrage and attention grabbing things. Now, we don't have that anymore like we used to when we had the leadership of the Labour Party, because, you know, Jeremy Corbyn could say a big thing, and I mean, actually, by definition, it wasn't necessarily news, but it stood a very good chance to being news. And that, you know, if he were still leader, for example, or if Keir had wanted to push this agenda, if he had been pushing it more, it's far more likely it would have got into broadcast, because it becomes a legitimate news point. Broadcast journalists are more likely to follow the story. It's more likely to end up on the 6 o'clock news or the 10 o'clock news. So we have to look about what resources do we have, and how can people shift the agenda. And then you basically look at movements. movements can grab the agenda with direct action, with other forms of occupations, stunts, and so on, which forces the attention to our issue. We need to think a bit like, Priti Patel and Dominic Cummings, just in reverse. What did the Tories do when the Black Lives Matter protests just caught fire in the UK? Right. It's not only that they caught fire, it's that they caught fire and they were popular. These are the things that had, not only mass support across the whole population, but then incredibly concentrated support in people, I don't know, under 40, under 50, just like completely common sense stuff, which is why you see the Premier League adopting it and everything else. So they've got to shift that attention away from demands for social justice to something else. So, what do they do? One, there's the Churchill statue thing. No one was saying anything about the Churchill statue, but it makes such a good photo. I mean, from a comms point of view, they're really smart, because what photographer can resist photographing the boarded up Churchill, which then people who aren't following the story that closely, which is everyone, the overwhelming majority of people, they say, well, of course, there must be some threat to the Churchill statue. That's why they've done it, and they shift attention. Or Priti Patel has her thing about, there are a few dinghies coming over the channel of desperate people seeking a place of safety, and they're turning up on the Kent coast. And so you create a new super force with a new guy who looks good in a suit, and they take all the photos with him, and they get the RAF planes flying over the top, and the ships go out, and it's spectacle. And of course that makes news. So then broadcast companies, the broadcasters, they go and send their film crews to embed with the anti-smuggler ships, and that becomes news. That becomes the national conversation. So I think it's not enough for us to just think about how can we improve independent media, how can we get it more funds, how can we get more eyeballs and attention, even though we really have to do that. And it's not just enough, how can we get the few people on the left that can get on mainstream media talking about it, but we do have to do that. It's also how can we, as a movement, drag that attention. So that might mean, the occupying of offices of the big companies, big outsourcing companies that have, made lots of money off failing the public. That might mean seeking out the family office in Mauritius that received a huge, I think that was another Byline Times story, that received some huge PPE contract, and going and doing some stunt to do with that. That's the kind of thing which will capture the attention, make things viral, demand attention, demand that controversy, and shifts the ground. It shifts the ground that the politicians have to operate on, and it will shift the editorial agendas.
Shifting the ground, making things move, making the stories that you need to make happen in the world, so that the politicians have to deal with what you're talking about. They have to deal with the issues that are affecting you day to day. For example, just last week, there was a debate on food insecurity in the UK, and the politicians, you saw them, the conservative ones, the right-wing ones, they were scared. They were scared of this conversation, because the evidence is clear that there is it's not an issue, it is an issue. Food insecurity for families, child poverty is an issue. And as people start to shift that narrative, and people start to influence people like Marcus Rashford, and you have MPs like Ian Byrne and others in Parliament actually taking these issues on and putting it right there in front of them, and shifting the camera basically towards those issues, you start to take control of what is going on and how we can fix issues around the world. Now, today, I just want to do a little message, because something happened to me, and I have a platform. I have a privilege on this platform to be able to say what I want to say and talk about different issues. And today is the first day of Pride Month. So happy Pride Month to all my LGBTQIA plus family, comrades, people. You're all big, you're all beautiful, and I love you all. And I love that we're in a world where, you know, things are changing, and we can start to actually we can start to actually look at the issues that the LGBTQIA plus society are dealing with, and we don't have the barriers that we maybe had 20 years ago. But one thing that has continued, and the reason it really highlighted to me today, is because as a straight male, I never thought this would be a problem to me, but someone used homophobia as an attack on me on the internet, and it puzzled me. It puzzled me so much. Number one, that anyone would still use homophobia as an attack, as a form of comedy to try and have a go at someone, but also the fact that this is, you know, this is, people see this as acceptable. People see this as a way of conversating online, in real life, or whatever. And just in the same way, I would ask my white comrades to stand up and say something if they ever saw any racism. For example, you know, the words to it's enough to say you're not racist, but to be anti-racist is taking action. I probably messed up that line, but I've made it my own now, so take it. But that's the same with homophobia. And on the first day of the 2021 Pride Month, where we're going to be able to go out and celebrate a couple of Pride events, hopefully, and we'll be able to hug some people and have some good times, let's really start putting the nail in on homophobia. Yeah, let's start challenging it in our communities, because it's really not acceptable, and I don't want anyone to feel that they can't go out of their house or go on the internet in fear of being attacked for who they are, because I know how that feels. And if I can use my platform to help support anyone out there who's feeling that way, then I definitely will. Now, talking to people who support people, man, I've got a, as they say up here, I've got a belter of a guest coming on now. It is a good friend of mine, and a fantastic activist, organizer, and many other things. Author. I'm not sure that she's a doctor yet. I think she let's find out. Are you Chañtelle Lunt? What's going on? Welcome to On the Bywire. How you doing? You good?
Hi, Daniel. I am very good. Slightly husky, so apologise for the voice, but I'm very good, and happy Pride Month to you.
Yeah, happy Pride Month. I'm guessing the huskiness isn't to do with you going out on the ale this weekend, although you did have a lively weekend, right?
Yeah, it's not to do with me going out on the aisle. I was out on the mic or megaphone at an national Kill the Bill protest in London. So my voice went to a good cause, but it's just recovering.
Wow. So Kill the Bill protest in London. How many attended this weekend?
I'd say anywhere between 500 to 1,000. I was at the front, so I couldn't see, but I couldn't see past all the people who were there. So I assume it was quite a large number.
And it was hot as well. So boy, like I have to, was it your nan you showed a picture to, and the first thing she noticed was your pants? Yeah. See, like I've been to a few protests. Leather pants are not a good idea on a hot sunny day in London.
No. With the spring or whatever season we're in, with this May, we've had like the wettest May since records began. So I was like, do you know what? I'll just play it safe. I can't wear jeans in case they shrink. But yeah, it was a very hot day, and it was, you know, like my nan said, you know, you shouldn't have worn those trousers, Shan. I was like, I know. Sweating.
That was the first thing I noticed as well. But then also, you know, just seeing the numbers of people out active, actually wanting to take part in fighting for their right to democracy, it's a beautiful thing. One of the things I noticed from a lot of the pictures was that there's a lot of young people, and I suppose like new faces as well when it comes to leading these marches and stuff. For yourself, you know, what's that like going to these protests, especially down in London? You've organized quite a few up in Liverpool, and I know you've traveled to a few around the country. When you're seeing a lot of young people getting involved in these things, you know, what kind of a message does that give to you, and what do you think we need to do to really capitalize on that?
It makes me feel really hopeful. Like, these young people are clued up. They know what's happening politically. They know what's happening in activism. They know what mainstream media isn't telling them. And they really, seek out the news from so many different platforms and places. They'll see maybe a headline and then they'll go and find out for themselves. They're quite critical thinkers. And I think it's absolutely amazing. As you say, so many kinds of, the way they say like superheroes aren't born, the kinds of made. It's a little bit like activists because of the situation that we're in, socially, economically, politically. A lot of young people have sat there and gone, do you know what? It's down to us, basically. So we need to take this by the horns and really get out there. And they've just taken it on with such strength and passion. It's absolutely inspiring. It's amazing.
Yeah, like you look back 2 years ago when you saw the school children coming out for the environmental protests. All power to them. Yeah, the same is happening now. Last year with the Black Lives Matter protests, the significant thing was the amount of young people. More recently, solidarity to Palestine. There was the Palestinian people, Palestinian protests, and people came out, and there was a lot of young people out, and it's a great thing to see. And you talk there about they see the headlines and they go and do their own research. One of the things we definitely want to do is be able to give here on Bywire, is be able to give people an alternative view to what you're getting on maybe GMB or Sunday Morning with Mar. I don't even know what his show's called. I know it's Mar, but that guy on BBC, we want to give something alternative, a different message, and also platform people that would normally get platformed on the BBC, ITV or Sky, wherever it may be. Talking about independent media, obviously, we've got a few different stories from some of our partners. I think the first one is from Open Democracy. So we're looking at what Boris Johnson's new allies tell us about global Britain. Just while I get this up on the screen there, Chantelle, do you want to tell us a bit more about this and why you picked this as one of today's stories?
Yeah, so it's kind of basically Boris Johnson. One of his first visitors is a leader from Hungary, and this person is known for being quite populist, quite right-leaning, quite anti-immigration, and also the kinds of leaning against democracy. And this is one of the first people Boris Johnson's kind of invited to 10 Downing Street for talks, and it's at a time when we're looking to make trade deals, and kind of it's indicating that we could be making trade deals with them, as we have with places like Australia, who aren't, they're not out there waving the flag for wokeness and waving the flag for forward thinking kind of socialism or anything like that. So it's something that I think people should be reading and people should be keeping an eye on. Okay, who are we trying to make deals with? But it also talks about, trends and the way that this government is leaning in this post-Brexit world. So cutting international aid budgets, decorating the flat with Tory donations, and then having an independent advisor who's actually someone who's appointed by the Prime Minister and can only investigate things with the Prime Minister's say-so. So, when you think about kinds of scrutiny and objectivity, it's looking less and less democratic by the day.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose when you were a kid, your parents say to you things like, surround yourself with people who are gonna make you feel good, who are gonna bring you up, lift you up, and all that kind of stuff. And Boris is basically doing that, right?
Yeah. All of his little right-wing friends, and the people investigating him are the people he's eating with in the evening. It's like, yay, honestly.
Exactly. And I suppose it's a massive reflection on the kind of views that this government has in how they want to treat people, really, during the Syrian refugee crisis, which, really and truly, has it ever ended? My man was putting up walls before Trump. Like Trump was not the first to be talking about building walls. Less said about Keir Starmer and parks in North London, but and walls. but this is it. There's definitely like a narrative with these people that they build up these ideas and they kind of create, I suppose, culture around what they're doing. It's like, yeah, build walls to stop people and stuff like that. Like, and then you go over to looking at really how Orban has treated not just within democracy, it's the media and the rights to the freedom of the media within Hungary, and then some of the stuff that Boris is doing over here. Just for example, look at the bill that we're trying to kill at the moment. It's stark in how scary it is. Now, like on the point of global Britain and what Boris says a global Britain should look like, I'll be interested to hear in your views and the direction that we should be going in. But also at the same time, you know, when we have got the leader of one of the most powerful countries in the world doing exactly this, what are the things that you think we need to see people doing to try and fight this, take it on, bring it down, end it? What's your view?
I think in terms of global Britain and the post-Brexit Wales, we need to be looking at, you know, fair deals and not exploiting kinds of developing countries, as we just have a history of doing in every which way. We exploit developing countries, and you can see that's the way they're leaning towards. And I think in terms of focusing on a lot of these policies that Brexit have brought in are basically making the rich richer. They're doing very little for working class people. So the rich really wanted to come in because it's going to make life easier for them. It's going to remove kinds of so-called red tape, especially environmental red tape, which they don't really want to adhere to, like, you know, the EU Green Deal and things like that. And none of this is going to benefit us 50 years down the line. It's like I say, what's the point? I think we're the sixth wealthiest economy. What is the point of being the sixth wealthiest economy if children are starving in this country and all you're sending them is half a bell pepper? So I think what we really need to be focusing on is the standards of living, and kind of, you know, I think they do it in the Netherlands or somewhere like that. They're not focusing on GDP, that's the one. They're focusing on how happy the citizens are and what the quality of life is in their country. And that's what we need to be doing, because what is the point of money and wealth and saying how rich we are and having, you know, gold plated buildings if right at the bottom people have this, you know, we've got like a difference of 20 years life expectancy, depends on if you're from the north or the south. That's ridiculous. We've got kids who go to bed hungry versus kids who get the best of everything. So I think if we're looking at a global Britain, we should be leading the way in, you know, happiness for citizens, food for citizens, and a basic standards of living, which means the people at the bottom eat, have internet, you know, all the things Jeremy was saying on the last election. So we have this basic standards of living where you have a shelter over your head. We don't have homelessness. And we can do that with our current wealth, and then we can lead by that. But at the moment, it just seems to be focusing on, okay, how can we line our pockets? How can we retain power? Look at what they're trying to do with voting. They've kind of kept hold of more power with voting. They're trying to bring in voter ID. They're just trying to kind of erode democracy. Look at the police crime court and sentencing bill. They're eroding democracy and also giving us a worse quality of life down at the bottom with working class people. So I don't think this government is ever going to go for socialism or caring about people, but blue sky thinking. It'll be really nice if they did, and if we could be, you know, as they said in the Sewell report, you know, England should be an example for racial equality. Maybe we could actually be an example for a thriving kind of economy where people are well looked after.
You got to give credit, like, to this government and I don't mean this in the way that it maybe sounds at first, but you got to give credit to them in that they are so brave in like they do something terribly wrong and they're like, oh, we're going to do a report on that. And then the report comes out and it's like, we were great. It's like Family Guy. Do you know what I mean? It's like that guy. It's just, I'm great.
Honestly.
When we were kids, this kind of stuff was comedy on the TV. It's the kind of stuff our parents watch and they took the mick out of. And now we're sitting there, we're like, rah, these guys literally were taking notes.
What it is? It's like, who do you believe, me or your lying guys? Like every black person's reading, what? England's an example of racial harmony. I did not get that memo. And it's like the whole thing about cheese where they're saying, oh, you know, we've exported this amount of cheese, but forgetting that like the EU have stopped buying cheese from us. So actually we're exporting less cheese. And it's just like, stop lying. Like we can all see what's happening.
If you say a lie enough times, people will believe it. I think that's the old saying. And a subject that definitely brings up a lot of lies was the EU. The obviously we have left the EU now. Big bad Brexit or good Brexit, depends how you view it. I still, the other day I was talking to my wife, I still say breakfast by mistake. I'm like, do you know during the breakfast campaign, she's like, you got food on your mind too much. Like, if you guys saw the last episode, obviously I love food, man. Big up the National Food Service, providing food 7 days a week for the people, by the people, for the people. Food is good. Anyway, to the point, 6 reasons why the EU isn't as green as it claims. Again, another one from Open Democracy. Big shout to Open Democracy, man. They've honestly put the work in over the last year. Like, whew, they do not get the credit they deserve for some of the stories that have broken in mainstream media. Is down to the kind of investigative journalism that you get from independent media like Open Democracy. So big up the guys here. This one by Laura Basu, and I really like this because it's people, especially during the EU referendum, screamed and shouted from the rooftops about how great the EU is and how it protected our environment. To be honest, I used some of those arguments when talking to people about the EU. I won't get into specifically my views on the EU and the referendum. I think it is what it is. We are where we are and we've left. But let's not look to the EU for the things that they pretend to be doing good, and let's actually expose these kind of big groupings or governments or authorities that are actually pretending to do good when in fact they're not. So over to you, Chantelle. What were the main points out of this article that really highlighted for you that you wanted to just pick up on? What stood out?
I think the main one is what they all seem to do is the suggestion that the economy can continue to grow and we can continue along the lines that we're going down, and there'll be no impact on the environment. To promote kind of a Green Deal, you have to acknowledge that there is a limit to growth, basically. There's a limit to how much we can kind of continue within capitalism, production, the food industry, without destroying the planet. And that's what basically this Green Deal doesn't do. It doesn't acknowledge the limits to economic growth, and it actually encourages it. So it's like citing data from the 90s through to 2017 to argue that CO2 has decreased, but it doesn't consider that imports from China have quadrupled. So it's kind of deflecting and saying, look over there, and not, presenting kinds of cherry picked data and then suggesting that it means we're going to be fine. No, to address climate change is to say, okay, there is a limit to economic growth, and nobody's saying that, not even the EU. And then the other thing is, they talk about this green technology, and they're saying that it's produced by wind and water and solar and whatever. But it doesn't say that 90% of it's still fossil fuels, and it's only 0.01% is produced by wind and water. So these kind of notions that there's an alternative energy source which is green, again, it's misleading, because wind, water, solar, they only produce a really, really small amount of energy. So it's literally just changing one fossil fuel to another. And it's an honest conversation needs to be had. We need to make lifestyle changes. Everyone needs to be doing it, especially governments. So this kind of notion that we can all continue with the lifestyles we have, we can have this culture of just picking up a car whenever we want one, wearing a t-shirt once, throwing it away, eating anything and everything and any time of year. It's unsustainable, and that's why we're in this crisis. And I think this Green Deal, as the article says, does not acknowledge that there is a limit to growth, and we can't continue to grow as an economy or as a population if we want to actually save the planet and reverse the damage that's done.
Boom, show's over. I think one of the things that I got from what you said there as well is this idea that there's 2 things that stand out to me. Is number one, this whole idea that while they tell us to have a shower instead of a bath, or don't fill the kettle up, or all these little changes we're supposed to make, which are absolutely fine. I have no problem with the majority of them, especially plastic. Like, can we just get rid of plastic, man? It's not a good thing. But yeah, these changes that we can make, a lot of the time they're not our fault though. Like, when I go into a shop, like plastic, I will do my best not to use plastic, but everything that we buy is covered in plastic. Everything, you know, even down to like the big companies like Amazon, when they send us our packages, there's a lot less plastic on them now. But there's, like, you know, for everything's plugged in around me. I was going to use this tiny little thing. The other earbuds are available, but this AirPods, it came in a box like 5-6 times the size of it. It was massive. And that though it's not us, it's the big companies all the way. But while they are telling us to recycle and do these things, where's their money going? Where's these billions of pounds going? And they're basically divesting. I'm not good with money and figures. You know, I used to work in a bank. Blame the financial crash on me. But what they're doing is they are literally just killing the earth, and the people that they're killing. And this is the second point, is that a lot of the damage they're doing to the earth is rooted in this kind of imperialistic racism that goes on, because what they're doing is they're killing the global south, and they have killed so much of the global south. The homes, the rainforest, the natural environments in which people lived on and lived healthy lives from all across the global south have been damaged and are being damaged and are being ruined. Going back to the first story where we were talking about Boris Johnson making friends with dictators across the world. I've forgotten the guy's name. Bolsonaro. Is it Bolsonaro in Brazil? What is he doing? He's actively just burning down rainforests, and that is in part to do with this worldwide approach and attempts to just kill off the global south, fund capitalism, and really it's not doing anything to improve the world. And I think they're the two things we have to remember, that a lot of these environmental campaigns that they talk about from places like the European Union, and they celebrate their Green Week, actually they're still racist, they're still killing the earth. And like you said, we really need to have a big conversation about it. And it's scary. Well, it's not scary, it's beautiful, but scary, the fact that it's taken a load of school children to have to come out of school to really start the conversation. So they have my full support to continue what they're doing at the moment. Now, just finally, like, we've got a little bit of time left, so I want to jump on this one. The last story is from Declassified UK, and I definitely wanted to get this one on because, number one, I love Declassified. Again, do some fantastic work. This one is by Matt Kennard and Mark Curtis. It's an article from today. MI5 and MI6 are flouting environmental legislation. And I always love seeing that big building there in London. Like, they're meant to be this big secret organization, and they just built the most obvious building. And it's crazy.
Lit it up like crazy. A Christmas tree. We're here.
We're here. But, like, you know, let's not get into that. But the headline here is that the new head of MI6 says his agency, it made me laugh every time I read this today. His agency will monitor other countries' climate commitments, but the UK's intelligence agencies are refusing to provide any information on their own environmental footprint. So please tell us a bit more about this, Chantelle. What are your thoughts? Go ahead.
Well, it's classified, isn't it? I feel like it's like, you know, what you want for your lunch is classified. They're basically pointing the finger at all the other countries, saying, you know, we need to check your commitment to tackling the climate emergency and spy on you as we do everyone. But then when Declassified UK have approached them and tried to get, you know, data and information of their own kinds of commitments to climate change and their own carbon footprint and CO2 emissions, etc., they've refused to kind of release it. And the article kind of suggests that, you know, they're revealing government secrets if they tell us how much the Lecky bill was, and it's like, no, not really, though, is it? So yeah, they're just kind of avoiding and dodging, which can only mean one thing. We know that when organisations dodge, avoid, or release heavily redacted kinds of copies of the British gas bill or any other supplier, then it means that they've not been adhering to their own rules. So basically, it's do as I say, not as I do with them.
Yeah, and I suppose going back really again, when you're looking at dictators being friends with dictators, what you start to get is dictatorships going on, and that's in every part of the government. Now, I'm always suspicious of anything that's like, oh, well, we're a secret agency, because what's secret if you're telling us you're a secret? You know what I mean? Also, if we're in this kind of world where the media doesn't, mainstream media doesn't question the government or the powers that be. But when independent media start to actually question these things, they start to act like it's the journalists, the investigative journalists that are the problem. And they change that narrative. And I think one of the things we don't have here in the UK is an encouragement for people, journalists specifically, but people to question like what is going on, always asking why. One thing I always do is teach my daughter to say why, whether it's in school or me. I teach her to say why to me, get me to give her a reason. And I think we've been taught not to do that. And it's easy for the government and the media to turn around and say you're asking too many questions. And given the work that you're doing around Kill the Bill activism, and also around Black Lives Matter, because we know that going back to last year, the protests, the police, their surveillance was very, very heavy on anyone who attended a Black Lives Matter vigil. I remember the first one in Liverpool. I sat on the outside because I'd hurt my leg and I was like waiting for you guys to get down. But I remember seeing the police all hiding behind St. George's Hall. For anyone that doesn't know, it's a massive building in the middle of Liverpool, and they had a shed load of meat wagons just lined up down the street behind this massive building where they knew that people were going to be turning up and holding their peaceful protest. And what each set of officers had was one person with a camera. Now, if you've ever been to any kind of protest, you'll have seen these before, where they have these cameras on a stick and they walk along and they just film. And these cameras use facial identity. Is it facial recognition software to be able to identify people in case they ever get into any trouble before, or if they've been in any, well, I say trouble, if they've been in trouble with the police before, then it will pick them up and identify them to the police so that they can take a decision on what they want to do with that person. But there's all this surveillance, there's all this secrecy, hiding behind buildings until people turn up, when people are just going out there and saying that they want a better environment, they want a better world, and they want to know how much the energy bills are for the MI5. Where do you see this going? Are we? James said in his interview just before, I don't know if you caught it, that he does see that there is going to be a lot of civil unrest in the near future, and over the next couple of years. Where do you see things going? If we don't start to see the change that we need to see on the issues that I've mentioned, do you agree? Do you think there is going to be this level of civil unrest? And do you think there's a way out of this road to dictatorship and fascism that we're on?
Yeah, I do think we're on a road to civil unrest, and we're sleepwalking towards being a police state, as you say. This kind of overt, surveillance and intelligence gathering usually was reserved for kinds of OCGs, organised crime groups, the worst organised crime groups. Now they're just using it on peaceful civilians. And, they're bringing out new definitions of activists, like extreme activists, which kind of sort of a hybrid of terrorist terminology to make you think that those are really extreme individuals. But when you look at the definitions, an extreme activist, which kind of justifies MI5 and whoever else to use really intensive surveillance, is literally an activist who travels from one city to another, like me. And it's like, what makes it extreme? You know, going to St. Helens, oh no, she's extreme. Yeah, it could be considered extreme, but come on, let's calm down a bit. It's just like they've got it. Honestly, my mum would say they've gone power mad, and that's how it feels every day, whether it be the Sewell report, whether it be the PHSE legislation, which basically makes it impossible for organisations to come into schools if they promote a victim narrative. And then the Sewell report saying, you know, Black people should move away from victim narratives. It shows you the response the government have had to BLM. So last year, BLM have peacefully protested almost the whole year, talking about trauma, talking about pain. And rather than listening, the government are legislating to try and make us be quiet. So now, if this, you know, police crime sentencing and court bill goes through, not even one person can stand with a megaphone. It's without potentially going to prison for 10 years. It's literally legislating at a time when everyone is on the street, which is telling you something is going wrong in our country. At a time when everyone is trying to make our voices heard, the government is essentially putting its hands in its ears and going, la, 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 I'm not listening. And if you carry on, you're going to prison for 10 years. And that's not right. I think the only way out of this is for the government to do what other governments have done and other places have done. Even America is better than us at the moment. They've listened. Some police departments have actually stopped going out with firearms to low-level, you know, incidents so that the likelihood of a Black person being shot is a lot less. Germany has returned artifacts to museums that were stolen from Africa. And all the meanwhile, Britain's telling the museums, don't you move a single thing. So it does seem like the UK is going right the way over there. We're going all the way to the right at a time when even America's kind of going, oh, you know what, let's listen to these protesters. Let's change some laws. Let's make life easier for them so that people aren't on the streets every weekend screaming for change. What is more powerful than thousands of people screaming for change? And how dare they put their hands in the fingers and try and make us be quiet? But I don't think, even if the bill passes, I do not think that will stop the protest, because the strength of feeling on so many issues, on Palestine, on BLM, on, you know, reclaim these streets, kill the bill, the strength of feeling is too much. And where do people go if you make all protesting illegal? So if you essentially make all protesting illegal, then there's no barometer of how someone should act. So I think they'll put themselves in really worrying territory, because it's like in for a penny, in for a pound. If we can't legally use our voices, then what's stopping people from doing other things? And I think they need to be really careful, because you have to have a legal way to make your voice heard. And, you know, public order legislation already covers people who go too far. They can be arrested if you damage something, criminal damage. If you shout something offensive at someone, you've got public order legislation. They do not need more laws. This is purely because they don't want to listen to the people. And that is a very dangerous road to go down.
Wow. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, Chantelle. Before we do wrap up the show, we was going to just highlight about a case that's been brought up by BLM today. Just going to see if I can quickly bring it up. But I suppose on the point of what you're saying about what's better than people shouting and screaming out on the streets, some of that was about to start with a case today where someone was going to be deported. I'm just getting their name up now.
Joey Badiako, I think.
Go ahead. Do you know the details? Do you want to go ahead?
I think it was Joey Badiako. If I am pronouncing his name wrong, I apologize.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was going to be deported, I think, on a British Airways flight, and he was, he was suicidal, he was mentally unwell. And there was a big campaign basically on Twitter saying, do not, British Airways, do not fly this person away. And apparently it was an illegal deportation. Obviously, I don't know. It's all on Twitter, so I don't know if it's factually correct. But the latest update is that he has been freed and he's not going to be deported. But that shows people power. And I don't know if anyone saw the protests in Scotland when they tried to take basically one of these dorm raids that they seem to be doing at an increasing rate. They tried to take these neighbours, just take them out the house and put them on a plane. And these Scottish residents were having none of it. Someone even sat underneath the van for about 7 hours and held on, and they had to release these guys. And I think that is the epitome of people power. You cannot not listen to the people if enough of us get out there. And that's what that was. So if you'd ever want to kind of, restore your faith in humanity, society, protest, find that video of the Scottish neighbours. It's absolutely gorgeous, the video. It'll uplift you.
Yeah, the moment at the end where everyone's just cheering and clapping, and I love seeing the police walking away with their tail between their legs, and
Like,
yeah, like like ACAB, all of that. But I don't. At the end of the day, I get that those police officers, they've got families to go home to. You know what I mean? I don't want to see them beaten and all of that. What I love to see is them going with their tail between their legs, all upset. What a way to end the show on the power of people, talking about the great people of Glasgow. Big up the Glaswegians, and also the fantastic activism from BLM, who before last year were already stopping these kind of deportations and bringing attention to them. Chantelle, thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for all the work that you do. I know you're involved with a lot of different groups of people, and just keeping those networks going, keeping that activism alive, inspiring a lot of young people is fantastic. So we really appreciate it. Hopefully, one day I'll be sitting there with someone and you'll be in one of the articles. They'll be talking about that Chañtelle Lunt. Trust me. But for you guys sitting at home or on the train, wherever you might be watching this, because that's the beauty of 2021 and technology, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for watching. We will be back this Thursday. This is on the Bywire. It is going to become a regular show. The more you like, the more you subscribe, the more you follow, the more you retweet, the more you share, all of them social media things there. Get on it, get on the vibe, get on the Bywire, because this is on the Bywire News with Dan Lewis and Chantelle. Thank you very much. Have a great night, people. Peace and love.
Thank you.